the Community Task Force. Community Task Force members, we've done this a fair few times, and it's always lovely to see your faces and to hear your voices and to see you on the chat. But a couple things to note: if you're not talking, we ask that you go ahead and mute your line. The most of our meeting today is really going to be focused on your discussion and hopefully getting to a recommendation. And for that, you know, there's so much that we miss when we're not able to be together in person. And these kinds of video platforms do give us some great options, but we are going to ask, as Cassie said, that if possible, when we are in that discussion piece, if you're able to keep your video on, keep your lines muted as much as possible so we can limit any background noise, but do turn your videos on so we can at least see each other. And that'll also help me know if folks want to speak. Raise your hand. And just make sure that folks are still here and engaged. So thank you for your grace in this time of working with us as we conduct meetings online. It's always just wonderful to keep the conversations going, and I think tonight will be no exception. Of a lot of robust conversation, even as we stare into our webcams and our computer screens. So glad to spend my Monday night with you. Actually, I think, Cassie, we might have a slide or two, but before we get into that, why don't we go ahead and, I think I saw a couple more folks come in. We'll do a round of introductions. So this will be our opportunity, as usual, to let members of the public who might be watching know who is in the room. So I'm going to put a couple names into the chat. If you don't have the chat box open on your screen, please open that up so that you can follow along. And we'll just go in order of the folks that I see on my screen, and my screen probably looks a little different from yours. So sorry, I'll just let you know who's going next in the chat, so follow along there. And if you can let us know, if you can turn your video on, unmute yourself and let us know who you are, and if you're representing a group or an organization, what group or organization you are with, that would be great. Then everybody knows who's here. So I think Peter is still getting some help with getting his audio sorted. So Bill, I'm going to start with Bill, Art, and Cameron to kick us off.
Yeah, Bill Burgle with the Portland Freight Committee.
Art Graves with the Multnomah County Bike Ped Citizen Advisory Committee.
Cameron here with the Portland Spirit, but Mariners in general as well.
Then we're going to continue with Dan, Fred, and Jackie.
Hi, Dan Lenson, board member in the Old Town Community Association and representing Old Town.
Good evening, everybody. Fred Cooper, representing the Laurel Ocean neighborhood and our esteemed emergency team.
There you go, Jackie.
Muted. Jackie Tate, community member.
And we'll continue with Jennifer, Paul, and Marie.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Stein. I'm with Central City Concern.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Good evening.
Hello, Paul Lyman with Oregon Walks.
Hi, good evening. Marie Dodds, AAA Oregon, and I represent 700,000 drivers across the state.
So you were too quick. How about we continue with Stella, Timothy, and Howie?
Stella Butler with the Gresham Neighborhood Coalition.
Timothy Desper with Portland Rescue Mission.
Howie, are you there? Are you able to see us or hear us? If you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. Okay, we might be having some issues there, so we'll come back to Howie. Kylie, how about Kylie and then Robert next?
Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Wilson. I'm with the Portland Business Alliance.
Kylie. Robert, I can see you talking, but I can't actually hear you. So something's up with your audio.
How about that? Sorry about that. Sorry, Robert McDonald with American Medical Response and my dog. Sorry.
And your dog. Great to have you both with us. And Susan, are you there?
Right here, Susan Lindsay, Buckman Community Association. I'm the disembodied head right now.
Beautiful. We can't see you, but I'm imagining the disembodied head.
You can't see me? Oh, here.
I see you right now.
I didn't press the right button. Now can you imagine can you see the disembodied head? There it is.
There it is. It's disembodied. It's wonderful. You're enjoying a beautiful day in the mountains. Thank you, Susan. Peter, are you here? Are you able to say hello?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yay. Hello, Peter.
Unfortunately, it's on my phone, but I am here.
Great. And Peter, would you mind telling us what organization you're representing?
I represent the Central East Side Industrial Council.
Thanks, Peter. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And Howie, I think Liz is working with you right now, but Howie is here as well. And it looks like we also have Sarah, they're all moving. Sharon and Ed, would you mind saying hello? We can see you. I think if you can unmute yourselves, Sharon and Ed, we can hear you as well.
How's that?
Wonderful. We can hear you. Are you both there?
Yes, Ed is here. Yes.
Wonderful. And the organization you're representing, or just representing community?
We're representing the larger community.
Wonderful. Sharon and Ed Woodwardman, thank you. And okay, Tesha, I always do this.
You got it right.
Yes.
Tesha Eisenberg with Mercy Corps.
Wonderful, Tesha. We're glad that you're here. Did I miss any of our community task force members with the exception of Howie, who I think we're still getting up and running online? Okay, wonderful. We've got a number of consultants in the room and county staff members as well, who I think we're all kind of familiar with. We'll maybe just ask them to wave to the cameras. I think a lot of those cameras are on. Yes, a lot of familiar faces here that we'll hear from potentially at various points in the evening. So welcome to folks. Okay, Cassie, I think we might be ready for a couple of slides that we're going to run through. And community task force members, if you want to turn your videos off to grab a snack, do whatever you need to do, pet your dog, it's a great time. We'll be coming back on with your videos shortly. Okay. So this is our June 15th meeting. We're kicking things off. And Kathy, yep, there we go. So just a reminder of some of our protocols for this meeting. If it's really helpful for me, community task force members, even if you just raise your hand in the video when we're all kind of in that discussion time in our agenda, so I know if you have something to say and I can start to make a list to go in order. For me, it's the most helpful because it's the most like having a meeting in person. So go ahead and feel free to raise your hand if you have something that you'd like to say, or you can use the chat box and just type in to that chat box, I have a question, I have something to say. You can type in the entirety of your question if you'd like, but you don't have to. It's just to help us know who has something to say, and then we can go in order, and I will help facilitate that. Again, we're going to ask that folks mute their lines if they're not speaking, but turn their video on. We might ask some of the staff in the room to turn their video off just so we can focus on the community task force members' faces, but folks will kind of come in and out as needed. Okay, Cassie, I think we're ready for, and then Liz is here. Liz, our intrepid staffer who is at tech support. So if you are encountering any issues, she's just put her cell phone number in the chat, or you can email her and she's on board to make sure that you get what you need. So great. Pass you on to the next one. Okay, so our objective for this evening is really quite simple, but it's something we've been working towards for a long time. And our hope is that you as a group feel that you're ready to make a recommendation on preferred alternatives, including the traffic options during construction and the bridge alternatives. So that's what we're working for tonight. We do have 3 hours held for this meeting to go until 9, but we'll use as much as we need. And it's really guided by the discussion of the community task force members. So that's what we're here to do this evening. Should be exciting. Okay, and we'll talk through kind of our voting protocols and all of that shortly. But we're going to dive on into public comment in a minute, and then Heather will give us a overview, and then we'll get into the meat of what we're here to do today. Okay. Great. I think we're getting Howie back online. We can hear him. He's back on mute. Okay. see, can you go to the next slide, please? We did our introductions, feeling good about that. Okay, so public comment. Community task force members, you received an email from Cassie earlier today that included some additional questions from task force members, kind of an addendum to what you received on Friday. And you also received a letter from the City Club Earthquake Resiliency Advisory Committee. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to read that, but if you haven't yet, feel free to check that out. But they are just expressing their hope that the no build option not be selected as an option for this project, and their deep hope that some kind of bridge that is earthquake resilient be built as quickly as possible. So for them, they're asking that the no build not be considered as an option as part of their public comment. That was the only piece of public comment we received ahead of time. But again, if you're watching and you want to chime in with any public comment, feel free to email that to the project team and we can make sure that is circulated with the community task force. Okay, move on to the next slide. Okay, so Heather, you're going to tell us a little bit about the process overview and the steps that we've been embarking on and what's yet to come. So Heather, over to you.
Thank you, Allison. Well, I know that this committee is very familiar with the process that has led up to tonight for your discussion around getting to a recommendation for a preferred alternative. And really what I just want to, in showing this, is to just really acknowledge the work that the committee has done over the past year during this environmental phase on a project that's purpose is really to create a much needed seismically resilient Burnside bridge to support our region's ability to respond and recover after a major earthquake. All the work that you've done to identify interests and criteria and weightings, hear results of scoring and technical information to support your conversation tonight. I really also just want to remind you that after tonight's meeting, we'll be taking your recommendation to the community for their review and input this summer. We'll bring that input back to you this fall in September, so you can hear the community feedback on your recommendation. You can confirm, make any refinements to your recommendation at that September meeting, so that in October, your recommendation can get forwarded to the policy group. Once the policy group makes their formal recommendation, we will then prepare and publish our draft EIS in January of 21 with that preferred alternative in it. And then the other piece that we're going to begin to work with you all on this fall, as well as our community and our agency partners, is the type selection phase. And if we want to move to the next slide, I just want to touch a little bit again on we're really in that, we are in the environmental review phase. That is really under one federal decision, which does require us to have our federal permits within 90 days of completion of our environmental review process, which is really why we're embarking on this bridge type selection process to help us to get to those federal permitting requirements. We know there's been a lot of questions from yourself, from task force members, about what this process looks like. We're going to spend a little bit of time at the end of your meeting talking about that some more, but we did share a fact sheet with you all that hopefully helped to answer those questions around type selection, which really at the heart of it is getting to the choice of a bastille or lift movable bridge, and then the superstructure type for the approach spans. And then once we get into final design, which really happens there in that third bar or the blue bar, that design process, that's where other design factors such as the architectural details, the materials, things like column shapes, bridge lighting, those things all come during that final design phase. So we are, as you have your discussion this evening around your preferred alternative recommendation, if you have other questions related to that, staff are here to answer those for you. But we really just, Allison, I think, want to turn this back over to the committee members so that they can get into their conversation around recommending a preferred alternative.
All right, thanks, Heather. So in the weeks leading up to this meeting, I think Cassie reached out to everyone on the community task force, and I'm sure many of you had lovely phone calls with Cassie. But the purpose of that was just to see kind of where folks are at, if they had any additional questions. And it sounds like what was heard is that people really are feeling ready for this discussion and to make a recommendation. So we hope that that's still true this evening. There was also some interest in more clarity around the process and the long span alternative. And so the team put together a fact sheet along with a process graphic for type selection, which was sent round to folks. So you should have received that fact sheet and that process graphic ahead of this meeting. And after sending those materials out, there were some additional questions that came up. And so those were compiled by the team and sent round to folks. There are also a couple of additional questions that came in after that was emailed out on Friday that came in this weekend. So Cassie sent an email out a couple of hours ago that outlined some responses to those kind of final questions. So hopefully you had an opportunity to see that. If you're like me and you like to multitask sometimes during meetings, you can also pull that up because that is waiting for you in your email and you can review that this evening. But hopefully folks are feeling pretty good about this. That seems to be what was heard when Cassie checked in with folks, and we're going to dive on in. So Cassie, next slide. I'll walk us through how we're going to approach voting this evening. It's a little different since we're not in person, but it's similar. It's a lot of the same stuff that we've done in person. So we're going to kick things off. And we're separating out the traffic options and the bridge type selections. We're going to have two votes this evening, if you feel ready. We're going to start with a round robin. So just like we did with introductions, I'll kind of walk folks through a round robin of just folks sharing their preference on an alternative and any comments you want to share about why. It's not a formal vote, but it's just to let the rest of the group know what you're sitting with. If you have additional concerns or things that you're not sure of, or if you're between two alternatives and you want to share that with the group, we're going to start off with a round robin. We want to be sure that we hear from everyone, so we'll make sure that even if we're having some audio issues, that we get that feedback from every member of the CTF who's present tonight, and also allow you to ask questions of each other. There might be some questions or comments that come up that need to be addressed by the staff team or the design consultants. That can absolutely happen, but really the purpose is for you to talk to each other, much like we did when we did the weighting exercise, what seems like forever ago, but was really not that long ago. After that, we're going to ask for a member of the CTF to put forward a recommendation. So we'll kind of open that up and hear a recommendation, and then we're going to do a round robin of voting. Your charter is asking for consensus, or we're aiming for consensus in decisions, but we know that that's not always possible. So a recommendation for this group is constituted as a majority, so really 50% plus one. But we know that your message is strengthened, and especially taking this out to the wider community, higher levels of agreement and consensus on a recommendation send a stronger message to the public and can indicate why you chose some of these things, but also to your decision makers. So in this, we're asking that you look at balancing the interests of the community as a whole and the purpose of the project. A majority vote will move a recommendation forward, but it really is the opportunity for you to decide what's going to be the best option for the purpose of this project, building a seismically resilient Burnside Bridge, and for the wider needs of the community. And you've all expressed at various times the diversity of perspectives from different businesses, different stakeholders, different interest groups that are all around the Burnside Bridge. And we hope that this evening will be no exception, and that you bring that kind of balanced and robust discussion to our talks tonight. So that's kind of the rough outline of what we're going to do. We're going to open it up with a round robin of discussion. We're going to hear from everyone. We'll ask for recommendation, and then we'll vote. So Cassie, can you go to the next slide, please? So as you recall, we had three options that you could use when we're voting in person. That was a thumbs up, a thumbs to the side, and a thumbs down. We're going to use the same thing tonight. We're just going to ask you to verbally share that with us, so it can be one, captured for our record, and in case we have any video issues, we can hear how you're voting. So again, a thumbs up is that you support the recommendation. A thumbs to the side or a middle thumb indicates that you can live with it. It might not be your favorite option, but you recognize that it might be the best option to move forward and therefore you support it. A thumbs down indicates that you do not support the recommendation. With these votes, we know that these are crucial votes in this process and that you may support the recommendation, but also have considerations that you want to be sure captured to take into the next phase once that design phase kicks off, or to share with your decision makers and with the policy group. So at any point, whether you have a thumbs up, a thumbs to the side, or a thumbs down, you're welcome to share comments that you would like to be captured as a part of this decision to be used going forward. So it doesn't have to be just a yes, end of story, but it can be a yes, and I have some additional thoughts or considerations that I'd like to be captured. But again, thumbs up, I support this recommendation. Thumbs to the side, I can live with it. Not my favorite, but I support it. And thumbs down, I do not support this recommendation. That's a no. So that's what we're going for tonight. Should be a similar story to what we have heard in the past. But maybe, does anybody have any questions? I can't see all of you right now. But maybe if anybody wants to go ahead and unmute themselves or type into the chat if you have a question about anything that we've covered so far.
Well, this is Bill. Where do you vote? Is that going to be another panel that we'll see?
Where do you vote?
Yeah, how do you do the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb sideways?
We're going to do a round robin and ask you to verbally share that.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to use any of the Mentimeter, the online voting tools that we used in the past. Okay. We're going to just keep it to us talking it out, much like we would if we were in person. Thanks, Bill. Any other questions from folks? Okay, if they come up, great, we'll work through it. So let's get into it. We're going to start off our conversation this evening with looking at traffic options during construction. So we're starting off, this is our first area of discussion and voting, and then we'll move into the bridge type selection. So really your prelude to Act 1. I don't know, I'm working through that metaphor. And thank you, Cassie. So you have two options for traffic types. One is a temporary bridge and one is a full bridge closure. If CTF members are able, we're going to take away the slides for now, and we're going to look at each other and talk this through. If you're able to turn your video on and keep yourself muted, but turn your video on so we can all see each other. We're going to start things off with just a round robin of asking folks what their preference is. Remember that you have two options. And again, if you're sitting with something, if you're not sure, if you have a question that you'd like to ask of someone else in the group, now's the time to do it. So Bill, you were the first person on my screen. So I'm going to hear from Bill, then Art, and then Howie if he's able to. So Bill, when we look at traffic options, what are you sitting with right now? What is your preference? This is not your final vote, but just what are you thinking right now?
Yeah, my preference would be the full bridge closure, no temporary bridge.
Short and sweet. Thanks, Bill. Art, over to you. Oh, Art, I think you're muted still. We can't hear you.
Of course. Could you have somebody, Steve or maybe Jeff, just kind of remind me what is the general time savings and cost savings between the bridge closure, or sorry, between the temporary bridge and the non-temporary bridge?
Yeah, this is Steve. I'll take that one. So the general cost savings is $90 million. That comes with the bridge closure rather than having the temporary bridge. And the construction duration savings is between 1.5 and 2 years, depending on which alternative. 1.5 for the seismic retrofit and 2 years for all of the different replacements.
And just while I kind of have you here, Steve, so what's the benefit? The benefit is just people can get across, a certain percentage of people can get across?
Correct. So the bridge itself, to remind everyone, the bridge itself has one lane of traffic in each direction, plus a bike lane, plus a pedestrian walkway. It still reduces the overall capacity compared to what's out there today. And therefore, for vehicles it reduces the crossing time by somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes, depending on which alternate route you would take.
2 to 4 minutes. Okay.
And so 5 minutes for buses. I should say that part too. So 2 to 4 for conventional vehicles, freight, and then about 5 minutes for buses.
Right. Okay. So I guess that said, I mean, I also support a bridge option that doesn't have a temporary bridge.
Okay, so that full closure option.
Right.
Cool. Thanks, Art. Howie, are you able to unmute yourself? I'm getting some messages from Liz in the chat. I think Howie is frozen potentially right now, but he's communicating with Liz, and it sounds like full closure is his preference right now. If we're able to get Howie back online, we'll open that up for him. But Fred, why don't you continue?
Okay. I'm kind of middle on this. I'm conflicted whether to go with the whole bridge closure, and there's several reasons for that. I'm concerned about the traffic delays of diverting all of the Burnside traffic to the other bridges, and then therefore increasing commuting delays during peak hours on all the bridges. Every bridge that gets a spread of this traffic, they're impacted. So it's not just like affecting people that use the Burnside crossing. And so with a full bridge closure, I think, Steve has mentioned this before, it's at least a 9-minute delay, at least. It depends on your destination, but and then what route you pick. But, if you're looking at the cost to the commuting public, those that are driving, not using public transportation, it's substantial. That traffic delays and commuting are well known throughout the United States, and I ran some numbers, and it's like $30 to $35 million as to what the cost to the public is, let alone the inconvenience, the irritation. I see a public nightmare happening here if we tear down the bridge and tell them to go another route. So, I'll go either way, but this concerns me, and so that's why I'm like this.
Okay, thank you, Fred. We're hearing a lot of interference, and I'm seeing some folks in the chat. So maybe could everybody mute themselves for a second? We're still hearing some interference, but we're going to keep going. Fred, thank you for that. It sounds like you're kind of in the middle. You're going to be listening to some of the other maybe rationale that folks might be sharing this evening, and you could kind of be swayed into either direction, it sounds like. So kind of got a thumb in the middle here. Man, we are still getting a lot of interference, but let's just keep trying, huh? Cameron, how about you? Why don't you continue?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards full bridge closure. I hear what Fred's saying about community backlash, but I also know that there's going to be a whole lot of community backlash if we spend an additional $90 million on a temporary bridge, especially when the estimated increase in commute times is only 2 to 4 minutes. And it would also increase the overall length of the project by, I think they said 1.5 years. I could be wrong on that number. I couldn't actually find it in my forms. But an additional 1.5 years, maybe more, to the project's amount of time, the additional money, and I realize that it will be an impact to the people, but I would rather have us, 2 to 4 minute delay over the course of a shorter time period than, a 2 to 3 minute delay over the course of a significantly longer time period. So I'm definitely leaning towards no bridge. That's all I have to say. No temporary bridge.
Thank you, Cameron. Gabe, you're up next in my view.
Yeah, I'm more for no temporary bridge.
Cool. Short and sweet. Thank you. Dan, are you there? Hi, Dan. Dan, go right ahead. You're up next in my view.
No temporary bridge.
Great. How about we continue with Jackie and then Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm also for full closure. I think the cost is too much, the time, the additional time is too much, and the benefit is really poor with just having 2 lanes. In addition to the environmental impact, seems like it'd be huge. So I'm a big no.
Thank you, Jackie. Jennifer, and I'm not sure if you had your hand up, but go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah. I feel like I am the sole dissenter. So I actually spoke with my supervisor, who is our Chief Housing and Strategy Officer, this afternoon. And we just had a conversation about some preferences for the organization. And I kind of just want to put it out there that we would really prefer to have the temporary bridge, because there's some concern over the influx of traffic through Old Town and crossing through, zigzagging around to get to Broadway, for example, or kind of any of the other alternative bridges to get across the river, because we have a number of sites. It's not just the site that we have at the base of the bridge, but we have sites all along Burnside that are both clinic sites as well as housing sites. And there's just some concern over safety of our residents and our clients as they're kind of going to and fro between their housing spaces and their healthcare spaces. So I just wanted to be able to express that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for that. Kylie, how about Kylie and then Paul?
Hi, I'm going to echo Jennifer on that too. Our concerns about just access for businesses and folks taking the cross and things like that. So I'm I'm in the middle, kind of, because the full closure does make sense in some instances, but I'm also worried about access.
Okay. Kylie, it was a little difficult to hear you, but it sounds like you're kind of reiterating some of Jennifer's standpoints and you're sort of in the middle on some of that. Great, thank you. Paul, go right ahead.
So I am in support of the full bridge closure. I don't feel that the benefits that the temporary bridge provide are enough to outweigh the additional cost and the additional time. I did hear some concerns some people have about the traffic impacts, but I think the extending the construction by 2 additional years will extend the traffic impacts that occur regardless with either the full bridge closure or the temporary bridge. They will occur. And I think we were told that even with the temporary bridge, there will be intermittent full closures of that bridge during the construction period. So we will have some phases where the temporary bridge will be closed anyway. So it seems more beneficial to just get it done more quickly and with less cost with the full closure.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, we continue with Marie and then Peter.
You bet. I'm leaning towards the full bridge closure with no temporary bridge for the reasons that have already been explained, the additional cost involved with the temporary bridge and the additional time for the project, 1.5 to 2 years, as well as the environmental impact. Obviously, representing AAA, I am concerned about traffic, but I think that an extra 1.5 to 2 years of this project going on is actually, to me, more of a detriment than just getting the project over with and built more quickly.
Thank you, Marie. Peter, you're up next.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute everything. I'm in favor of the full closure and no temporary bridge.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Bye.
Sharon and Ed, you're a 2 for 1. So whoever wants to start in your square, you're up next. I think you're muted still. We can't hear you. There you go. Yep.
Okay. I'm for the full bridge closure. There are lots of alternatives, and the downtown bridges are only 1/3 mile apart. So I'm in favor of getting it done with and the bridge built.
Thank you, Sharon. Ed?
Okay. Or with the full closure also.
How about Stella and then Susan?
I'm not in favor of the temporary bridge, so I'll go with the full closure.
Okay, it's not one, it's the other. Thank you. Susan?
The Buckman Community Association voted on this maybe a year ago. I don't know, it's been a long time. We're in full favor of not having, well, that's like a double negative. We do not support the temporary bridge whatsoever.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
For all of the reasons mentioned, too expensive and too much time for too little gain. Thank you,
Susan. How about Timothy? You're up next.
I'm conflicted. I would say middle. I definitely see that the committee's leaning is going to be towards this way. So I want to honor the committee's work and honor all of the partners and they've done all this work. Always just want to highlight concerns of our houseless population and impacts to the pedestrian travel times across the river. I know we've talked about mitigating that in different ways. I hope that we can be creative in mitigating that because the reality is to get from one side of the Burnside Bridge to the other is going to be a very, very difficult experience looping pedestrian-wise to any other bridge. That will be a burden that I hope that we can work together to solve to mitigate that impact. So.
Robert, can't see you, but can I hear you? Are you there, Robert?
Yeah. Hi there. I am in favor of a full closure with no temporary bridge.
Thank you. And Tesha?
Hi all. I'm also in favor of a full closure for all the reasons said, and I want to thank everyone who brought up concerns for why we may not want that, and I agree that I support full closure with the hopes that those mitigating factors are put in place.
Thank you, Tesha. Howie, I think you're back with us. We shared kind of the thoughts that you initially put in the chat, but go ahead and if you'd like to share your rationale or your thinking right now.
I support full closure with no temporary bridge due to the environmental impact and the cost and the actual 1.5 years extra time it would create.
Thank you, Howie. Did I miss any CTF members? Okay, I'm guessing not. So folks, do you have any questions you'd like to ask each other? I think we've heard, and it seems like, yes, we kind of see where the will of the group is. And this is slightly painful in that we're going to repeat around Robin here shortly. But I do want to just open up some space if anybody does want to ask any questions of each other or get any additional clarification for the record or for their own edification on any choices. Yeah, Cameron, go ahead.
Yeah, I know I just I sort of mentioned the additional amount of time, but can we just get somebody to confirm how much longer the construction process would be with the temporary bridge?
Is that a Steve question?
I'll take it either way. So the additional time is 1.5 years for the enhanced seismic retrofit and 2 years for any of the replacement options.
Seeing some nodding heads to that, so I got the clarity needed. Any other questions for staff, for each other? Yeah, Paul.
So when I spoke with my fellow members at Oregon Walks, someone suggested, is there a way to have a ped bike ferry? And I don't think that's ever been discussed. So I think Tim brought up the concern about the additional time it takes to go from one side of the river to the other on foot. And is that something the project team could address, whether that's even feasible or something that could be considered at a later stage, perhaps?
So this is Steve. I'll take that one too. So number one, a ferry, subject to where this starting point, ending point is feasible. There's a lot of permitting requirements that would have to go into that, and a lot of additional thought that would have to go into it. At this point, it's not something that we have actively included into the project the way it sits now. It's certainly a type of mitigation that could be explored, but at this point, it's not part of the project as it stands today.
Go ahead, Cameron, and then Fred.
Yeah, I just want to kind of mirror what Steve said there. You know, as the one representing Maritime here, that's definitely something that could theoretically be done. There are a lot of permits involved with getting something like that going. And at the present time, I don't know of any boats in the area that could facilitate that. So it would be involved, you know, possibly somebody purchasing a boat, possibly, you know, I know that there's a push for the Frog Ferry right now, and a couple of other projects similar to that. So it is possible to do. That particular location doesn't have a dock on the west side of the river, but it does have a good landing spot on the east side of the river. So it might just be a slightly different area or slightly different something, or maybe a temporary dock being built. But it's possible it would just be a long process.
Thanks, Cameron. So we'll hear from Fred and then Art.
Yeah, I wanted to, you know, kind of clarify you know, how my preference is on this. I attended a number of the Transportation Working Group meetings. I requested the technical report that group produced and reviewed it. I looked at a lot of numbers, you know, and I really got deep into it. But the one thing that I urge happens is that there is a transportation plan, a detour plan that is a key element of the project. That, you know, what we've seen in the material presented to the task force has been pretty cursory, and it has to be a thorough plan for not to have some gridlock at, you know, like in the Old Town area when people are trying to use the Steel Bridge or get over to the Broadway Bridge. So that's my point. It needs to be a part of this project to have a very detailed plan for detours.
Fred. And Mike just popped into the chat to say that if there is no detour bridge, that the county does plan to explore TriMet passes for social service clients who are impacted by the bridge closure. So just FYI. Art, over to you.
Yes. So this is maybe a question to punt to Steve or Jeff, just about the overall, like, projected bike and pedestrian displacement numbers by the bridge. Like, how does the Burnside Bridge, how is it used in comparison to the other bridges for bikes and peds? So I guess what kind of numbers are we talking about in terms of people being displaced? And I mean bike and ped right now.
Unfortunately, I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but generally speaking, it's the middle to the lower use bridges compared to, for example, Steel Bridge or even the Broadway Bridge. I believe it's in the 2,000 range, maybe 2,400 for bikes. I'd have to go back and check my numbers on that again. And unfortunately, I don't have the exact numbers for pedestrians at my fingertips. That's something that we can get to.
Thanks, Steve. So I see Jennifer and then Bill.
I think this is maybe also to piggyback off of what Fred was saying related to any of the transportation studies, because I'm still really thinking about Broadway, and I'm thinking about North Broadway. And as anybody who lives or works in Chinatown knows, trying to make a left turn anywhere from Broadway to the river is nearly impossible after 5 o'clock on a regular weekday. So if there's anything that comes through on sort of traffic easements regarding protected turns or something, just would be a really nice thought along like the Broadway corridor, for example, or any of the other like 5th Avenue, 4th Avenue, any of the other options as people are trying to cross east to west.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jeff, I saw you briefly unmute yourself, and I don't know if you were going to chime in on that question that Art raised.
I was just gonna reinforce Steve's estimation of bikes. It was the latest count, it was around 2,500. I'm pulling up the transportation report right now to see if I can find the pedestrian numbers.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Well, why don't you go ahead with your question?
Is that me?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe looking at the purpose of what we're doing here in terms of trying to make an earthquake-ready bridge. At the best of things, it's 4 to 5 years out, and we could basically open up this the construction here, so we won't have a bridge per se for whether we have an earthquake or not. But if we had a ferry across the river, it would serve our purpose to provide a transportation link. Should an earthquake strike before we're ready to have this bridge, the rebuilt bridge, put in service. So I kind of like the idea of having some sort of ferry. And maybe the words as you go forward in the environmental process, maybe you could have those words in there so you wouldn't preclude putting in some sort of frog ferry or something that Cameron would support, that would go from one side of the river to the other, in the spirit of having a link across the river sooner than later. That's my thought.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Cameron, is that a hand? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just in regards to what Bill was saying, I know that the Portland Spirit is already part of the city's emergency preparedness plan in terms of if there were to be some sort of incident. It's already part of the deal that we are supposed to be ferrying people back and forth, and we already have that stuff all set up and ready to go. It's just that particular location at Burnside would require something additional to make it happen. And I was also thinking, this is the last time I spoke about this, that if you're looking in terms of how long it's going to take to get passengers on the boat, ferrying them across and then disembarking people, that could be a 15 to 20 minute process, because you're, just the way that it has to happen to get everyone on, that it might actually be longer than just going around. Now that I'm thinking about it, obviously it would be studied if it was being looked into more seriously, but it might actually add time instead of taking away. It might also be easier, obviously, for people with, who have difficulty walking long distances, that the ferry might be a much better option. But that's just my thought.
Thanks, Cameron. Jackie, I saw your hand, but I just want to remind CTF members that these kinds of considerations are absolutely the things that you can attach to your vote. I think we heard some folks who are kind of in the middle for some very clear reasons, and do remember that you are welcome and encouraged to share those considerations to make sure that they're captured moving into the next phase kind of officially on our record. But Jackie, over to you.
I wanted to say that I appreciate the folks who are concerned about pet traffic, or concerned about our houseless population and those other folks. I'm obviously one of the concerns I have around are for people with ADA, because that obviously walking at long distance is going to be a challenge for them. But I think that for me, knowing I walk the bridge on my way into work, is that when they changed it to the changing the lane numbers, that the bridge became very unsafe. It was really packed with traffic, and that impacts the entire up and down Burnside, with and so that itself creates some safety issues for pedestrians. So for me, I think it's a hard decision to say let's close it, but I think in terms of safety, to me, it's a better decision. So.
Thank you, Jackie. Jeff, I think did you have your hand raised?
No, I was just going to briefly, based on Bill's suggestion, I think it's a good thing to look into more, but our review early on of the statewide report about what is expected to happen after a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake includes a lot of landslides and subsidence and trees and logs and just a lot of flotsam coming down the river. So one of the concerns would be, can it even be navigable for days or maybe weeks, the river itself, because of so much debris in it?
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, folks, how are we feeling? We feeling ready to vote on this? Looking for maybe some nods from people. Yep. Okay. I think we're in a good place. There's some additional facts coming in from the team. Mike has chimed in that he thinks that the Burnside is the 4th most popular bike bridge. And Steve has just confirmed that the daily pedestrian use is 1,050 counted on May 15th, 2019. So that gives you a sense. But I think we've had some discussion. Folks look like they're ready to vote. So we're going to go around. I'll call on a couple people. We'll do the same thing. You can tell us thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down after we get a recommendation from somebody. So if somebody kind of wants to put forward a recommendation that we would vote on, CTF members. I don't know who wants to put forward that recommendation.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, Susan, what's the recommendation?
I move that we not build the temporary bridge.
So that would be a full bridge closure, no temporary bridge.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's go ahead and take that recommendation and vote on it. So we're looking for a thumbs up. You support that. You can also tell us why, thumbs to the side or thumbs down. And I see the thumbs already, but to make this super official, we're going to ask you to verbally share. So Art, if you want to chime in with your verbal share, we'll go Art, Bill, then Dan, if you're ready to vote.
Sorry, because so I'm voting on a negative. How do you want me to do that?
So the recommendation put forward is that there be just a full bridge closure, no temporary bridge being built.
So I support the proposal.
Okay, so that is a thumbs up from Art. Thank you, Bill.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Support. Cameron.
Yeah, thumbs up. Again, same reasons I mentioned earlier: additional cost, additional time, all that sort of stuff.
Great, thank you, Cameron. Dan, I said you were next, and then Cameron jumped in front of you. So.
Yes, that's in the affirmative, and I'm channeling the Land Use Committee for the Old Town Community Association in the affirmative.
Thank you, Dan. Fred, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to support the full bridge closure, and then with the provision that there is some, a serious element of the project for mitigating traffic delays, both for automobiles, vehicular traffic, and pedestrian bike.
Thank you, Fred. Gabe, over to you.
In the affirmative, with support to Fred's statement, and also any looking into a ped bike ferry. I think that would be a real positive in a lot of aspects.
Great, thank you, Gabe. Howie, over to you.
Affirmative.
Okay, let's go with thumbs up. Jackie, over to you.
I'm a thumbs up.
Great. Jennifer? Okay, so that's a...
Only because I can't get to my supervisor, so I'm still going to kind of keep with the thumbs down, but I really want to emphasize a better strategy and solution for pedestrians. So,
thank you for that, Jennifer. Kylie, over to you.
I will vote with a thumbs up on this one.
Okay, so it's a thumbs up from Kylie. Let's go over to Jackie. Are you there? I think Jackie might have stepped away. So Paul, over to you. Paul and then Marie.
Thumbs up. I support the recommendation for the full bridge closure.
And Jackie, sorry, you already voted. Apologies. You're good. Marie, over to you.
Yeah, I'm also a thumbs up for the reasons already stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Peter?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, I vote for the motion. I just want to say I am an extremely frequent user of the Burnside Bridge. It's ironically both my office and my home are on each end of the Burnside street, separated by about 40 miles. Ironically, but it's literally on the street. And I just think we need to suffer. I really feel for the pedestrians, and I really support anything we can do to get more river access and usability. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Let's go to Sharon and Ed. Oh, you're muted. I see your thumbs up, but I can't hear it.
Full bridge closure.
Thank you, Sharon. And Ed?
Thumbs up for me too.
Great. Okay, Stella?
I support the proposal.
Great. Susan? Yep, that's a thumbs up from Susan who put forward. Tim?
I'll take the opportunity to stay in the middle. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Robert?
It's a thumbs up for me.
Okay, thank you. And Tesha?
Thumbs up for me.
Okay, so that looks like that was all thumbs up in support of a full bridge closure with no temporary bridge construction, with the exception of one thumb to the side, which is still a support vote, just an I can live with it, and one thumbs down. So that is a recommendation that's going to move forward to the public. Congratulations, folks, you got through your first vote. Nice work. Yay. Okay, so our next order of business is to talk about bridge type selection, wherein you have 4 choices. I'm just curious, do folks need to step away for like 2 minutes for a break, or are you feeling good? If you're feeling good, maybe give me a little thumbs up and you're ready to keep moving. Okay, I'm seeing quite a few thumbs ups, and I think a couple folks have just gone ahead and taken a little bit of a break. So do what you need to do to keep yourselves healthy. But let's go ahead and just dive on into the next vote. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to just have an opportunity for everyone to kind of share where they're at. This is a more complicated choice in that you have 4 things that you're choosing from. And actually, Cassie, can you just bring up maybe that slide to show us what folks are voting on at this juncture? All right, so we are looking for a recommendation, if we can get there this evening, on a choice between the retrofit, the short span replacement, the long span replacement, or the Cooch connection replacement. So you have 4 options to talk through. You've received a little bit more information about the long span at the request of some of the CTF members. But for now, much like we did earlier, let's just go around and see where people are sitting, whether you're in between a couple of options. You know, if you have any preferences right now, with the caveat that this is not your final vote, that you're welcome to change your mind if you hear something compelling from someone else. So you've moved around a little bit on my screen. So actually, Tesha, I'm going to start with you this time. If you want to kind of share where you're at and if you have any preferences at the moment.
Yeah, I strongly support the replacement long span for the fact that in almost all categories it comes out on top, and I think the drawbacks of the long span just don't provide enough value to not go with that option from my perspective.
That's great, thank you, Tesha. Robert, how about you? If you're talking, I can't hear you.
Hi, sorry. I am firmly in support of the long span.
Okay, great, thank you. Tim, are you there?
Yes, I am. I would say I'm in support of a long span replacement as well.
Thank you, Tim. Stella, over to you.
Long span, very obvious for me.
Okay. How about over to Art?
I'm still deciding.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Cameron, how about you?
Yeah, same as most of the other people. The long span seems the best one. It's the cheapest. It's the shortest time period. And like everyone else said, in pretty much every single category, it did seem to come out on top. I think the most important one is in terms of seismic resiliency. It's the one that came out by far on top, is my understanding. And as that's the main point of this project, I think that should definitely be a strong reason why to vote that direction.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill, how about over to you?
Yeah, no, I agree. Long span. I was pleased that you found some examples of the combination of an arch and a bascule. Pennsylvania. To see that actually in use somewhere else. I hadn't realized that. My only concern is and I voiced this before, but just the if you could somehow balance the whether it's a cable stay bridge on either side or a tied arch bridge on either side, if I'd like some thought about balancing out the size of those two bridges. That's my one concern.
Thank you, Bill. That's great. Dan, are you there? I think Dan. Oh, there he is. Hi, Dan.
Yeah, sorry, I'm working too.
You're all right. So if you do want to share kind of what your preference is, not your formal vote on bridge type selection, but just kind of what you're sitting with, where you're at, what your preference is right now.
Right. Well, there's kind of 2 points of view. One is my own personal. I tend to lean towards, and I get the right terminology. I tend to like the long span alternative. And the land use is not real fan of any sort of long span. They like the short span.
So you're kind of sitting between those two right now.
Yeah, and we didn't take a vote in the community association, but I told the group that I would forward the opinions so that everybody on this community task force is aware that there's varied, but there's they lean towards one direction.
Okay. Thank you, Dan, for that. I appreciate that. Fred, how about over to you?
Well, I like the long span alternatives from the very moment that Steve presented it to the task force. It definitely met some of my concerns. My first priority has been always to have a project that met the seismic resiliency. And then I had several other concerns. One was minimizing impacts on east side businesses, particularly Pacific Fruit. And I like the way we can span over their properties with the long span without intermediate foundation structures. And then of course, saving the skate park. And then obviously project cost was another big concern to me. So I will probably vote for the long span alternative. I believe it best meets my concerns.
Thank you, Fred. How about Gabe? Over to you.
Definitely a proponent of the long span. Just want to thank the staff for putting together all the visuals. I think it was really helpful. But it's between the geotechnical and everything else that's been stated, it's the way to go.
Oh, thank you. And that shout out to the staff for those visuals. Got a lot of nodding heads. So thank you, staff, for putting that together. Jackie and then Jennifer.
I'm in support of the long span option also. I think from a geohazard perspective, it's definitely the best one.
Thank you, Jackie. Jennifer?
Also leaning towards the long span just for impacts to any of the properties on either side, particularly though on the west side over here.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Long span to go in.
Thank you. Howie, are you, I can see you. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm leaning towards the long span with some reservations about the overall aesthetics of it, but overall, the long span.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Howie. Kylie, over to you.
Echo what everybody else is saying, long span as well.
Okay. Paul?
So I also support the long span. I think it's probably the best bridge alternative because it has the fewest impacts to the river, best earthquake resiliency, lowest cost, highest score. I do like the additional space for pedestrians and bicycles for all of the replacement alternatives. But one thing that the long span does well that the short span does not is providing more space on the under the bridge on both sides because of the reduced number of pillars. So I support the long span.
How about Marie? You're next.
I also prefer the long span for all the reasons already mentioned.
Peter?
So can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of time because I think the long span is the one that needs to be built because of the need to have fewer pillars and because of the condition of the soil and because it provides opportunities in the future for expansion of the Esplanade and other things that might happen with the freeway. That being said, when I drive across a bridge and walk across a bridge and bike across a bridge, what strikes me is it's flat. The bridge is very flat and you see the city and you can see the river, you can see everything. And basic physics, general physics is that the less support underneath the bridge, the more support is required above the bridge. It's basic physics because of the weight. We all understand that. So the consequence of the long bridge is to go with superstructure above the bridge where there is none now. And right now, and I think that's going to be an issue when they tear the bridge down. I think it will be an issue through the historic landmarks review, the demolition review, that we are making a fundamental step of going from a flat bridge to a bridge that will have structure on the top. I am confident with the engineers we have on the job and the rapidly emerging material. It just in our life, our short lifetime, we're seeing dramatic changes in the materials that we're able to utilize to make these bridges strong. And we're seeing, for example, timber now being built in 5-6 story buildings. So I'm confident that the design team can go forward recognizing that the structure above the bridge is going to be an issue. So I vote for Long Bridge with that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. How about Susan?
Yeah, so I have some concerns about the aesthetics of the long span. What I like about it is the seismic resiliency, which is the whole reason why we've spent, countless hours doing this thing. That area close into the river is wiggly earth, which will jiggle. And but the having to removing the spans, of course, as Peter just said, moves all of the structural integrity above the bridge. So right now, as we're meeting right now, I'm not sure which direction they're going, but a few thousand people are gathering right by my house again over at Washington High School, Revolution Hall, and they're coming downtown. And they've been coming downtown oftentimes across that Burnside Bridge. Tremendous openness and view of the city and that melding between the east side and the west side. So I will support the long span because the bridge that won't jiggle and fall down. But I really have some very strong concerns about the aesthetics, and particularly in terms of the east side, east side's view. I think I've stated this before, the east side is kind of in the stepchild of the city of Portland for a long time, the inner east side. And it's one of the benefits of the inner east side, even though we've got the freeway and all sorts of things, is that we have a very nice view of downtown. So things that obstruct that right in the middle of the city, which Burnside is, are challenging. So I would like to, I was very grateful that Steve or Heather or whoever sent out the nice kind of the facts about that and showed the different options. And we have a couple of different options on the bridge lift itself. So I will support it, but I want to remain involved, as does the members of the Buckman Community Association, around the design.
Thank you, Susan. Sharon and Ed, over to you.
It's taken me a while. Oh, are we on? Yeah. It's taken me a while to really convince myself that that's a wise thing. When the idea first came up, I thought it's really an intriguing idea. I was concerned about the aesthetic issue and the visibility impacts. But my own real concern, based on my own background in the bridge construction business, was building a long span bridge at these sites on the east and west side of the river, especially the east side with the railroad tracks and the freeway. It's an extremely challenging place to build a long span bridge that's partially over land. There are not many samples in the world that I could think of where the similar situations. And with that, and then on the yes, on that side also, the kind of constrained by the existing buildings and so forth. So I was a little concerned with how feasible it is, not from the standpoint of getting it built, because I have a lot of confidence that contractors can build anything, but what gets a little uncertain is what the cost will end up being when there are unusual circumstances, unusual conditions. And so whether the cost estimates are reasonable or not was a concern up front. Well, since then I've gotten some input from the team on what I've heard and read about what the team is doing. I've got much more confident that the design team will come up with a satisfactory solution that will be at a reasonable cost and still figure out a way to get the bridge built in a very difficult situation. So I kind of passed that hurdle. And then the other thing that's really swinging me, though, that has been mentioned is the staying away from the need to deal with the poor soil conditions, especially on the east side. I know I was the one that sent in a couple of questions that just got answered today about the ground improvements. Steve pointed out there the type of work, it described the type of ground improvements that might be used, jet grouting, and he's confident that it could be done and make the short span alternate safe by spending a lot of money on doing the proper ground improvements. On the other hand, one concern I have is that that ground improvement business kind of brings in another whole factor about how is it going to really behave in a huge earthquake? Is it going to be as reliable as we expect? And is there a better way to deal with it, like avoid it by going over the top? And that's kind of convinced me that from a reliability standpoint of having a usable bridge soon after a big earthquake, that it sounds like that's the long span is the best way to assure that by staying out of that poor soil area on the east side. I might mention too, just to finish up here, that as far as the poor soils on the east side, I've been concerned about that for years, ever since I heard that, I think it was the bridge engineer from ODOT some time ago, maybe 20 some years ago, said that they basically abandoned the idea of I-5 surviving after a huge earthquake, because that whole side of the river, is going to collapse and have lateral spreading out into the water. So they kind of give up on the freeway there. And we might be able to fight that with a proper ground improvement and a huge investment, but still there's a question mark. Is it really going to behave as we need it to behave when the big quake comes? So anyway, I'm now leaning toward the long span.
Thank you, Ed. Sharon?
So yeah, so I'm in favor of the long span with some reservations about proportion between the east, west, and what happens in the middle.
Thank you, Sharon. Art, I want to return back to you.
Yes. So, I guess there are options that are put forward out of the four that I think are better than others, and I think the long span is definitely has a lot of pluses to it. And I mentioned this to the team kind of earlier in the week that I really appreciate the long span kind of image that they sent over. It's really helpful. That said, after I got it, I spent a lot of time just kind of staring at the bridge examples, and I think that maybe one of the things that I'm still just trying to get kind of to speak to kind of the aesthetic part of it. I guess one of the things is that when I look at these examples, what I'm maybe searching for, and part of it might just be the way that they put the kind of the cut sheet together, the image sheet together, is that I'm just trying to think if the long span bridge option kind of fits a typology of bridges in the center of a city. Meaning, like, when I see these images, what these images of long span option bridges look like to me is bridges that are outside of the city. They're connecting like a region to a region. And I think the Burnside Bridge is connecting a neighborhood to a neighborhood. And I think that's even different than what Tillicum is doing. Tillicum's not connecting a neighborhood to a neighborhood in the way that Burnside is. Especially now, I think in the last few years, there are buildings that are right next to the bridge, right next to the river. So those neighborhoods are being amplified even more. So I guess I'm just trying to, part of, I think, what I've been looking for, and these images do help a lot, is just trying to understand like how that all shakes out. And kind of to go back to what Peter said, the trade-off is if there is less structure below, there's more structure above. And so just trying to get an understanding of what that structure is going to look like. I also don't necessarily know if I'm in completely agreement that less structure below is a net positive. I know that it provides better visibility. That it has less impact on the skate park. I'm in complete support of that. I guess what I'm a little bit nervous of is if there's more visibility and more area on the west side that's not policed or it's not programmed, and so that turns into just kind of a blight. It sort of actually creates a net negative for the park space, and that's, you know, that's impossible to know right now. So I mean, I've mentioned this before, but Peter's right. You know, the aesthetic of this bridge right now is extremely horizontal bridge, and this completely flips that around. So it'll, you know, it's a you know, an entirely different style. So I think you know, ultimately just maybe pushing the team to kind of come up with you know, I guess initially I was really kind of nervous about the arches. They just seemed kind of awkward, sort of not symmetrical, and just kind of thrown in there. They didn't really seem to fit in with anything. And I, you know, I think that right now there are views off of the bridge, and one specific thing that's been mentioned is the bridge, or the view to the Made in Portland sign. And I appreciate the project team saying that it will be a dynamic view, but you know, that's a sound euphemism for you're going to have to look for it. So I don't know if I really buy that. But that said, to come full circle, I don't think that there's a better option, and I think the net gains that this bridge offers, you know, it seems like it's way ahead in everything, in time, in cost. And so I think it's really hard to not be in support of it. But I would definitely want the team eventually to really investigate kind of other options, or get creative about how that structure, whether it's a tower or whether it's an arch, you know, what form that can take, how creative that can be. So
Thanks, Art.
I guess I was expecting I was hoping for a little bit more opposition, for a little bit more quick conversation. I didn't get it. So I'm having to kind of do it on my own. So thanks to Peter and Susan for throwing some wood on the fire.
That's an excellent segue. If folks maybe have changed their mind, or they do want to spark things up with a little opposition, but also to ask questions. So I see Peter's hand. Peter, then Bill.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yep, we can hear you.
I want to be able to express something to the next level of review here about our feelings. And Art said it really well. I had not even thought about it. I did. I lived in this area for over 50 years, and the concept of the bridge connecting neighborhoods as opposed to a bridge connecting a region, it just really sits with me well. And it's something that I think will sit with a lot of people well, because the Burnside does connect Portland. And I will point out that I was involved in the Central City plan process when downtown was downtown and the east side was somewhere else. And that was a big, huge defining moment in Portland when Portland redefined itself as the east side and the west side. And I understand what Susan's saying as well, obviously, because we have lived through it. I would like to be able to express forward the concept of the bridge connecting the neighborhoods as opposed to regions. I think that's a very powerful concept. Thank you.
And that got a nod from Kylie, so I'm guessing that there's some agreement there potentially, or yeah, taking that point to heart. Bill, you also had your hand raised. Go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to Art. He articulated what my concern is, and basically it's you know, it's a fairly complicated design. And I think it's going to task the design team with you know, how to blend all these. Basically, you have three bridges. You have the arch or the cable stay on either side of the river, plus the lift span in the middle. So you got three elements, and it tends to you know, I mean, you're competing with a lot of buildings around there too. So it has to be done elegantly if you can do that, and it's quite a challenge to try to mesh all these different elements in one span. So I guess that's if we're all voting on the long span, that's the task for us in the next few months here. So, but I think Art did a good job of underscoring what my concern was. I don't want the final result to be chaotic with the built environment. That's what I'm trying to say.
And Gabe raised a good point in the chat, asking if, you know, when you do come to vote, if these comments that you've been raising can be included and attached to your votes, you don't have to repeat them. And yes, absolutely. I think we're hearing some consistent themes. Laura's taking notes. We've got this recording, so we can certainly include your comments. And thank you, Peter, for specifying some of the things that you'd like to be carried forward into the next round. Other questions? Oh yeah, Cameron, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think that, you know, what's been said in the last couple of comments is really important. That obviously combining all those bridge ideas is really, really important. I know that there's a bunch of really good examples. I spent some time looking at some of my own this weekend. One of my favorites that I saw was the Samuel Beckett Bridge, which is a really cool sort of one-sided bridge that has most of the design off on one end, and then just some cable stays that go across. So something like that might be able to tie it in really nicely. But there, just so people know, I think that there are really good examples of sort of what we're looking at that are cool. The other thing that I'd like to put out there is that, you know, I know a lot of people think that the current Burnside Bridge, at least parts of it, are really aesthetically pleasing. And I know that the, you know, especially in my opinion, the bridge towers really solidify sort of the idea of what that bridge is all about. And I don't know if there's a way to possibly save one or both of those towers, if they could be cut and moved, or somehow incorporated maybe to the west side or the east side up on the banks. But it would be interesting to see if that was possible, because I know that the Burnside Bridge is, you know, it is a registered historic landmark, and I think that those towers are kind of the main, sort of the main center focus of that historic registry, and the part that I think people really enjoy the most. So if there was maybe some way to save one or both of those, that would be really cool to see.
Thanks, Cameron. Other comments, considerations, questions? CTF members? I can't see all of you, but I know you're there paying attention. Okay, not seeing anything. So if you want to maybe nod your head if you're feeling like we're good to vote on this. We heard a pretty clear near consensus on our first round, but I just want to kind of formally put this forward if a CTF member would like to make a recommendation on your preferred bridge alternative for the group to vote on.
Yeah,
this is Rob from Amor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Robert, go ahead. I think you beat Cameron to it, so it's over to you.
I'd like to propose that we consider the long span option.
Okay, so
and vote on that.
Okay, so we would be voting on the long span as your preferred bridge alternative to advance forward for public input. Okay, so why don't we kick things off with Art? I feel like I always put you on the spot, and that's because you're an A. So I'm actually, are you okay to start us off with a thumbs up, thumbs side, or thumbs down?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit of a wet blanket and go I think maybe the lone. Love the bridge, just want to keep my option. Don't want to be super enthusiastic about it.
Okay, so you can live with it, and I think you're kind of carrying over the comments that you've articulated in our earlier round of some of your concerns. Right. Okay, great, thank you. Art. Bill, you're next.
No, thumbs up.
Okay. Cameron?
Thumbs up.
Dan? Okay, thumbs to the side. You can live with it. Maybe not your favorite for the reasons you articulated. Thank you. Fred?
I'm in favor of the long span.
Great, thank you, Fred. Gabe?
Thumbs up.
The thumbs up for long span. Howie?
Thumbs up with concerns about the aesthetics.
Great, thank you, Howie. Jackie?
Thumbs up for long span.
Great, thank you, Jackie. Jennifer?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right, Kylie?
I'm gonna go thumbs up with concerns about the aesthetics as well.
Great, thank you, Kylie. Paul?
I support the long span alternative.
Great, thank you, Paul. Marie?
Thumbs up for long span.
Thank you, Marie. Peter?
So I would vote for the long span. However, I think the staff should write a paragraph that we can all review, the committee could develop consensus around, because I think we need to make a statement. And I think it needs to, the reason I'm voting for this with condition, the condition is that the bridge has to act as a connection between neighborhoods, and it needs to continue to act with its openness as a stage, because it is a stage now, and that's been completely obvious with the aerials of the demonstrations. So I'd like to see a statement. Can you guys write one? I mean, if anybody else wants to do that, I think it's I mean, how does that work?
I think that, yes, that is possible. I'm curious if we can kind of, before I lose track of who's voting where, we can continue, because what I'm hearing from you, Peter, is that you're in support of the long span. One thing you'd like to see is kind of a summarization of the key considerations that have been articulated here by CTF members tonight, and that come back to the CTF to be able to be part of kind of officially that you're able to say that, yes, that does capture accurately your considerations before it goes to the public or onto the policy group.
And I'm trying to do that without amending the motion, is what I'm trying to do here.
I think
I could make an amendment to the motion, but I don't want to do that. I just want to say yes and let you handle it.
Okay, I think we can do that. I don't think we have to be too formal with our Roberts rules here.
Correct.
So
I
we'll
agree.
we can certainly take that. That is A-okay with your charter. So thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Okay, how about over to Sharon and Ed?
Thumbs up for me.
Okay. And Ed?
Yeah, thumbs up.
Great. 2 thumbs up from Sharon and Ed. Stella, over to you.
Thumbs up.
Thank you, Stella. Timothy?
Thumbs up.
All right. And Tesha?
Thumbs up.
Great. And Robert? Robert, are you there? I can't hear you.
Sorry, when I made the motion, I thought I was in, but thumbs up, thumbs up.
Great. Just to know officially that you haven't changed your mind midway. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And Susan? Oh, Susan, I think we might have lost Susan on the internet. Have I missed any other CTF members? Hi, Susan. No, I do want your vote. I think your internet stopped briefly, but you're back, so go right ahead.
I'm back. Yeah, I'm having signal trouble tonight. I'm voting with reservations for the long span, with strong concerns about the aesthetics and all of the very articulate things that Art and Peter said about it bridging together 2 neighborhoods. And but I'm supporting it because it's the one that will the least expensive not fall down. But I didn't like some of the renderings of the drawings that we saw with the very large obstructive arches. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Susan. So by my count, that is a consensus vote of support for the long span alternative as your preferred bridge alternative. I think Peter's point is very well taken. Laura has been taking notes this evening, so I think you can expect to see a draft of your key considerations, the themes of your key considerations this evening, and you can take a look at those as a group and make sure that those accurately capture the spirit of some of your considerations and thoughts or concerns about the long span option. But that looks like the preferred alternative moving forward. So 2 pretty big votes this evening. Well done. Nice work, everyone. Okay, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Heather. And Heather, you might be able to say a little bit more about what happens next and the kind of the considerations that could be coming forward.
Well, absolutely. And yeah, I just want to echo congratulations, guys. It's been a lot of work to get here today, and just thumbs up to all of you guys and gals for your work tonight. I'm just going to take a brief moment to touch on one last slide, and then we'll let you go for the evening. As we've been talking with the group, a lot of conversations about as we're moving towards this recommendation with the policy group for your preferred alternative right now is the long span with no temporary detour bridge. We will in the fall start working with this committee to get through the type selection process. This is just to kind of highlight what some of the steps are. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time tonight going through this because we're going to be getting into these details in the fall, but really it will be a very similar process where you'll be working to identify your interests. We'll be coming up with screening criteria and measures to help to ultimately get to the recommendation around type selection once we kind of formalize again and wrap up your recommendation for the preferred alternative here this fall with the policy group. So again, thank you for all of your time. And there's still work to do, and we appreciate people who have expressed an interest in wanting to stay on for this next phase of work. So we'll continue to work with each of you to identify your representation and look at possibly expanding the group a little bit well for the next phase. So Allison, I think unless anybody has any specific questions they'd like to get into about that for tonight, that we're probably good to go.
Folks, do we have any final questions on next steps, or are y'all ready to break out the sparkling cider, champagne, and celebrate? I can't see you all, so go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question.
Yeah, this is Cameron. I'd just like to say thanks to you know, the team that really put all this stuff together, did all the work behind the scenes. You know, you guys all did a really good job. You answered all of our questions. You brought all the information together for us. And so thank you for just doing a really good job. And thanks to all my fellow task force members as well. This is a really great opportunity and a really good thing to do. And I enjoyed it immensely. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Cameron. Any other comments, kudos, questions, corrections, thoughts from the group? I'm not seeing anything, so I think instead of going till 9 o'clock tonight, we should all just go have a celebratory whatever you would like to do as we spend Monday night with some sunshine. Looks like a beautiful evening, so go enjoy your evening, folks. Thank you so much, and just a round of applause. Yay!
Yeah! Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great work.
We will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Did I miss you? When's our next meeting?
Great
September. September.
September. Have a wonderful summer.